subjects like this, we can only speak from obviously what we read on the net. None of us are in the US, but I think a lot of people do say that there's this dipping into people's private data that's stored remotely. But when you think about it, if we just take it for say the UK for argument's sake, when you imagine how many millions of users are storing their data remotely, whether it's a couple of pictures up on Facebook or whether it's using one of these data lockers that are free to use, there's a lot of people that do it, and I find it very difficult to see any agency or any body of people having enough resources to be able to dip into even a tiny fraction of the data that's being put there. And I would suggest that maybe, unless the States is very vastly different, and I don't know, and maybe somebody who is in the States can correct me on this, but I wouldn't consider they would have the resources to make an effective dipping exercise worthwhile, because out of the terabytes and terabytes of data that's put on there every couple of hours,
it wouldn't be this isn't sort of tinfoil hat stuff.
No.
Random FBI deciding, we'll just pick someone at random. I'm talking about like Applebaum guy, the WikiLeaks, one of the WikiLeaks guys who constantly gets stopped and harassed at the border, or the Iceland MP who they're demanding to hand over our direct messages from Twitter. I'm talking about stuff like that. People who they already target and they're already trying to investigate. If your data was stored locally and you're one of the people who are getting targeted for political reasons or corporate reasons or whatever it is, then it just makes it easy for them to target your account on whatever cloud services you use, whether it's Google, MSN, Yahoo, whoever. That's what I'm saying. So,
yeah. Well, that was just a slight minor discussion. Roy, if you've got nothing else to add with that one, we'll move on to Gordon's discussion for the evening and continue on with that. Roy, you happy with that?
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Gordon, we'll move on to your final article.
Right. This was something that kind of got me thinking. It's around gaming. It's a company called Transgaming, and the project they had called Sedega. Now, Sedega is one of it's not an emulator, but it's a way to run Windows programs on Linux. Translates system calls that it's expecting from Windows into Linux system calls so that it runs. It's not an emulator. But what Sedega did was, or what Transgaming did with the Sedega project, was they originally took, quite legally, they took the Wine code, they forked Wine, and added all sorts of modifications on it. It's designed for gaming, not as to deal with like DirectX and things like that. They did all their own modifications and they gave nothing back. They were apparently notorious for giving nothing back. It was just take from Wine. They gave nothing back. So they were essentially developing their own project with the benefit of all the improvements to Wine, but giving nothing back. And then that was apparently what prompted the Wine project to change the license. And they changed it, I think, to the GPL2, if I'm thinking correct. And when it changed to that license, it meant that Sedega could no longer take that code because they would have to give back their changes. The GPL requires them to give back their changes, and they weren't willing to do that. So therefore, Sedega were essentially cut adrift, and they were left to keep Sedega going purely off their own work rather than other people's. And apparently, I think it was last week or the week before that, they announced that they've abandoned Sedega. They can no longer keep up with it. And that made me think, first of all, well, good riddance. If that's all they're doing is taking, then stuff them, let them die, as far as I'm concerned, company-wise. Before we get any things about threats, as company-wise, let them die, let them wither. But it made me think that quite often you see one of the things that that's used against free software, is a sort of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt things around the free software. Is there's no what's the benefit of going open? What's the benefit of giving all your stuff away? And this is it's a very good example of that. It increases the developer base. Wine is, and there's other projects like Crossover that do fork from Wine, but they give back to Wine as well, and they apparently employ some of the Wine developers, and so the bigger the base is when it's free, the more people that are developing for it, the more people are fixing bugs, which benefits the project overall. Wine is still going strong, Crossover's going strong. Sedega chose to be scumbags, and they got cut off, and they can't compete anymore. So that's the benefit. That's an ideal example, a very living example of the benefit of going free and the fact that there is worth to it, rather than sort of going it alone.
I mean, me and Roy had a brief discussion, I think it was the last episode, in regards to Wine and Windows binaries in general, and what needs we still have for the for any sort of Windows binaries and instead of native Linux code. I was saying to Roy last time that I've got very little use of Wine now, but obviously you're right what you say. There is a worth in open development. I'll let Roy speak for a bit because I've got another little thing to add to the end of that. Obviously when Roy's put his views forward. Roy, if you want to make a comment.
Not specifically on this topic. I think, yeah, not specifically on this topic, but I have quite a few stories I could actually pass through at a later stage, maybe in the next show. I think I also wish to talk about past, especially recent stories. On the issue of privacy, things to do with people's control of code and people's control of computers or the software that they use, things which contain their data, things from personal data, credit cards or personal photos or whatever. That's something we also covered when we talked about China, and Gordon raised the very good point about that, when governments get involved, they try to, I put it in quotes, to protect their citizens, and one way to do that is to be nanny states, and you always have this concern. So anytime the company is actually involved in trying to control or to help you with your data outside of your computer and outside the scope of your control, I kind of get worried, because that's the point when you rely on other people managing your activities. It's increasingly digital things that you do on your computer or things that you do in your life, including interactions with family, with friends, photos, audio, and everything. Phones too. So
this is probably a bit of a spin-off here. But did you see about the technology that lets you put a date stamp or a time stamp on photographs?
Yeah, it was advertised on the BBC as well. It's really, 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 really stupid. And it's DRM of the sort that nobody would actually want to use because they restrict themselves. They basically say, well, do you have an embarrassing photo? Well, you're supposed to know in advance it's going to be embarrassing. You're supposed to limit it in terms of time. And it's really stupid. It's just more of a proof of concept. And I think the person who made this stuff up, he thought, oh, well, I could just put a timestamp and use encryption with timestamp to do a tuple.
Thing is, any DRM is easily broken by other people. It doesn't take that long. And the thing is, I mean, if I'm looking at a photograph of some really embarrassing photograph of someone, all I need to do is take a screen grab.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking the original photograph. I'm taking the screen grab, which a little plug, by the way. Screen grab add-on for Firefox is fantastic. It cuts out all the status bar and the address bar and that. It just takes the full. It can take the full page as well, not just the visible section, and turn that into an image.
You can also print the PDF, and then you get all the page, including the things that it actually puts it as a nice PDF, and you can do all sorts of things with it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's pointless. I can sort of see the attraction. I can see why people might want to do that, but then again, if you're taking an embarrassing photograph, I mean, it's aimed at kids, well, I'm saying kids, college, school age, where they're going to take embarrassing photographs